Let's check in with the guys from the arena as they're sitting there listening in to Jamie go off on a Knicks fan. Kyle and Derek would be proud.
Thank you.
Kyle Neubeck, Derek Bodner, live from.
Kyle's never gone off before.
No, he has.
No, I've never heard any such thing.
Nah, not since Wednesday or Tuesday, whatever it was. Let's head to the arena, check in with the guys with the nice playoffs backdrop.
Wow, that looks nice
for the fellas. Look at that. 50-point performances from you guys tonight on a bad wheel. And guys, look, as we know now, as Jamie goes off on a Knicks fan, again, you guys would be proud. But, man, now finding out about Joel Embiid, saying what he said about the coming back and winning, and they're going to win this series, and he backs up that talk. But then we also get the report from Adrian Wojnarowski that he's dealing with Bell's palsy. So when you finally hear that, knowing he's already dealing with the bad knee, backing up the conversation that he had after Game 2, what a remarkable performance to drop a playoff career best 50 and back up his talk.
Yeah, I mean, look, the guy's on not quite on one leg, but approaching being on one leg. He's got the eye and face issues. He said he's dealt with it. It's been a problem for his mouth as well. So whatever that does for eating, drinking, what have you. I mean, and also it looked like he might get ejected from this game at one point in the first half, right? Like that was he was in some real danger, although he did get into that, which we can talk about at some point later. Really shows in some ways how his game has evolved over the years, right? And how his game, frankly, has changed since he came back from the injury. Like, just to get up the amount of threes that he shot tonight is impressive on its own, because Joel didn't come into the league as like an excellent shooter, right? And now he made 7, or he took 7 threes in a
5 for
playoff
7,
game, which
4 in the third.
I think if he had taken 7 threes in a game as a rookie, you would have had, half the fan base screaming, "What the hell are you doing? Stick your big ass on the block," and things like that. But 50 ball, the first 50 ball of his playoff career, is a hell of a night for him. And frankly, they don't get that from him. They might be now 3-0 right now, because for most of the first half, they had very little going. Tyrese was, I think, 3 for 10, right? Like, not having a good night. And
yep.
That all changed, but Joel was the steadying, both the chaotic force and the steadying force in that game somehow at the same time.
Derek and Kyle, I asked Yvonne this. Do you believe the Sixers have been the better team these last 2 games? And I ask you on the heels of coming out of the locker room, because to me, I think internally, they're probably feeling as though we've outplayed them these last 2 games. Did you kind of sense a wave of confidence in that locker room tonight?
Yeah, for sure. And I think they have outplayed them these last 2 games. Obviously holding that lead there with 40 seconds left. I think they have almost evened up the rebounding battle, which was one of the real key differentiators early on. There's still some shooting variance, but obviously the Sixers shot the heck out of the ball tonight, but the Knicks made a lot as well. Josh Hart continues to look like Ray Allen out there in completely unpredictable ways. But yeah, I think they have every right to believe that they should be up to 2-1. They are not, but they have played really good basketball. They're just behind the 8 ball. Thinking how differently we would feel about this series if they had just taken care of the last 40 seconds of that game. Everybody would be extremely confident right now, not just because they had stolen one in New York and reclaimed home court advantage, but because of the way that they were playing. A couple of possessions down the stretch in the clutch can really change the way you feel about a series. I did rattle off some of the numbers here on our last show that coming back from an 0-2 hole after losing the first 2 on the road is really tough to do. This was obviously a very key step. This season would have essentially been over if they didn't accomplish this one. But yeah, I think they've played very good, and they even survived tonight in Jalen Brunson game, a player who was playing really, I don't say poorly, but certainly shooting poorly over the first 2 games. He came out, was on fire pretty much from the jump, got to some spots that he didn't, got to the foul line in ways that I'm sure frustrated a lot of Sixers fans and people who enjoy watching basketball. But they withstood that. They withstood some still hot shooting from Josh Hart, in large part because of a guy with 1 working leg and half of a working face.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kyle. I'm sorry.
Let me add on to that first, because Jamie asked about the confidence. If they lacked confidence, I don't think Joel's coming out of the last game, which was an absolute guillotine level loss, and saying, we're going to win the series, right? Like the belief is there. The belief is there in this team.
And by the way, everyone, because I know there was a lot of discussion about, oh man, he's got his head down. Look at that loser. Look at the guy who's not, like, now you know why his head was down. That was a ridiculous take at the time to jump to that conclusion. I think with today's revelation, it is seen that in retrospect now. And the way he has responded to just a insane amount of injuries and problems going on with that kind of a performance, it really was a pretty inspiring effort from Joel.
Yeah, it really was. And our buddy Ash checked in and said on the super chat, and he talked about how the guy dropped 50, and he's the first player to do so in under 20 shots, with the 13 from 19 from the floor, getting to the free throw line 21 times, draining 19 of those. The only other players to do so were Dirk with 48, Jordan 47, and Barkley with 44. And he comes out and does this as we talk about the leg and now dealing with some paralysis in his face and also talking the talk. And Kyle, as you said, we were sitting back here like, if this wasn't a playoff game, he's ejected for the stuff that he did. But he settled down, he chilled out coming out of the locker room. And it was a really great response after trailing by 3 and playing and having his emotions in it as much as he did in the first, which were negative.
I just want to say, I don't think it really dawned on me the absurdity of the situation until you said the words paralysis of the face on the stream. And it's like, man, just add another one to the long laundry list of things. I know Joel's the star, scored 50, all that. I do want to give a humongous shout out to Payne for his role.
Oh, you know I was getting there. You know I was going to get there.
I knew we would get there eventually, but the energy that he brought to that game was felt basically instantly. You know, Derek and I talked on press row. I was like, I don't know if this group they have in there is going to stop anybody, right? It's him and Lowry. I want to say it was probably Tobias. I have it written down somewhere. The point being, I was like, no way they're getting stops. Well, you don't have to get a ton of stops if Payne is just going to, go off and score and make threes on every other possession, right? But I think talking to him afterward, talking about like how he's gotten to this point as a vet where you just understand, like, you don't know when your number is going to be called. So you have to be engaged with, hey, are we all bought into the game plan? Are guys making the right rotations? If I was in this spot, what would I have needed to do? He's jumping up and down. He's yelling. He's screaming. He's talking to teammates on the bench. And then the second he gets in the game, he's able to make an immediate impact because mentally he's basically been in the game already, more from an observer and a coaching standpoint. But it just shows the difference between, a guy who's coming in ready to play in that type of game and guy whose minutes he took tonight, Buddy Hield, who he still looks completely lost at sea, does not seem to know how to get within the swing of things here. But just wanted to make sure I gave a big shout out to Payne, who I thought was excellent
bringing him
tonight.
up, Kyle and Derek. I'd love to hear both of you on this. I think a serious hat tip has to go to Nick Nurse for benching Buddy Hield. Doing the right thing or knowing what the right thing to do is and actually doing it are two different things. You want to speak to Nick Nurse? Did he comment after the game on his decision? Because Buddy Hield essentially got benched and Payne came in and was a difference maker in this game.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure I'd say that Nick knew what to do, because if he did, he would have done it earlier. I think he thought there was probably no harm in trying something else because what you were doing for the first 2.5 games was not working. And I think the real key differentiator with Cam, first of all, he gives you energy. That Buddy just doesn't give you a lot of. He gives you speed and athleticism, which, again, Buddy doesn't give you a ton of, and just gives you a live dribble and a little bit of playmaking that, again, Buddy just doesn't do a lot of. And if Buddy was making his shots and being the threat that he has been throughout his career, some of those deficiencies you could live with. But when he's not, and when he's hesitant to shoot and you're not able to get him open looks, yeah, you've got to go try something else. And I do think there are, we've talked a lot about the defensive concerns with having Cam out there alongside of Tyrese or even alongside of Kyle, although Kyle's obviously not this Kyle, the other Kyle. Kyle Lowry is obviously a much stronger point of attack defender and stronger physically. But there are some concerns, and give New York enough time, they might be able to exploit some of those. But he does so much else outside of shooting that I think it made sense to get him on the floor. And, oh, by the way, he brought a little bit of shooting too. Kyle mentioned the defensive concerns. legitimately, like a couple seconds later, they nailed like 3 threes in a row, and it's like, well, if you're just going to make a three every time down the floor, it doesn't really matter if you can defend them or not. And that shooting barrage there was it honestly is a little bit wild that they only ended up with 13 threes made on the night. 9 of them came in that third quarter, and one of the real impressive shooting displays that we've ever seen from this franchise. And I don't even really think that's hyperbole. I'd be surprised if they have many quarters where they have made more than 9 threes. I probably should. Did you look that up? Is that the most threes in a quarter? I would be surprised if there's many with a quarter with more than that. And that really saved them there.
No, it really did. And as we talked about it on our show on Tuesday, that they needed to go elsewhere. They needed to find something because the Buddy Hield part wasn't working. Even Kelly Oubre, while he bounced back tonight with the 15, he just needs something to go poorly away from the court to come back on the floor to play well, and that was obvious there tonight. But they needed to do something, and they did that, and he called the number of campaign. We mentioned Payne, Council, and KJ Martin, and he called the right number tonight with the campaign piece. Any update on the Melton part since he was available tonight and looked like he was dressed out there? Was it more of, yes, he's available and dressed, but maybe get him a few more practices underneath his belt before they throw him on the floor? Plus, the campaign thing works, so they didn't necessarily have to go in the bag of Melton.
So it sounded like there was a consideration for Melton and that basically he wasn't expanding the rotation. And so with Cam getting going, said Melton's not going to play tonight. So we obviously don't know if Melt is like 100% back. He was available, but they've had guys available this season. Nick Batum being a great example, and had the game where he just was able to come in for an inbounds pass. That's the only way that the medical staff cleared him to play in the game. And so, I think DeAnthony was more available, more healthy than that, but it came down to didn't want to go beyond the amount of players that they've been playing in the series. And so Cam got the call. We'll see. I would assume coming out of this one, now Nick won't reveal this obviously, but I would assume that Cam will get those minutes. Like Buddy is probably just banished to the shadow realm. And then we'll see, is there still a place for Melt to get, whether it's 5, whether it's 10 minutes as a guy on the wing, somebody to sub in there. That remains to be seen.
Yeah, it does. It's going to be an interesting one. The Sixers are 5.5-point favorites again on Sunday, guys. In case that strikes your fancy at all. Did you see anything from Tobias tonight? Made you feel any better? Started out in the first quarter a little bit better.
No.
And then kind of disappeared. I want to feel good about him, and I just can't. It's really disheartening.
The answer is no. Yeah, Derek just said, defensively didn't really hold up his end of the bargain either. So I don't know if you have expanded thoughts on that.
Well, no comment.
It is known, like on The Mandalorian. Like in this very small part of the recap I wrote tonight about Tobias, it was just like, this looks like every bad Tobias playoff game that happened.
Man,
right?
He shot a 3 from the wing that he bricked, and it was like, oh, here we go.
I just want to. It is known as Game of Thrones. I have spoken is the Mandalorian.
It's all the same, man. That's all just big budget fantasy nonsense, whatever.
Hey, what was the ratio in the arena? Of course, the Sixer fans were the Sixer fans, but we always talk about the Knicks fans traveling. What was it like in there?
There was some debate, right? I'd say I honestly expected it to be like 50-50, and I think at times the noise felt that way. But I think it was probably closer to 70-30.
Okay.
Sixers fans to Knicks fans, somewhere in the ballpark there. I'm not exactly sure, honestly. But listen, I give the Knicks fans who came credit. I'm sure you guys heard it on the broadcast. They were plenty loud when their team got rolling. Frankly, they were louder at times than they were at Madison Square Garden in games 1 and 2, but that's a story for another day. But yeah, sizable Knicks contingent as we expected. We will see how many of them are taking a 10 a.m. train on Sunday morning to come watch Game 4.
We all silly like the mayor.